Today we're going to go over the 4 principles, as Toby mentioned, that came about from the board, and we feel strongly that if any company can kind of match these 4 principles, believe in these 4 principles, live these 4 principles, their business will be more successful. To start, actually we're going to start with the first one, which is drive strategy with deep customer insights. And I would actually like to invite Jenny Bean up here. She's our experience director at Project 202. Thank you, Jenny. And I know there's a lot of people here, so we want this to be kind of intimate, so please feel free to ask questions, and please feel free to use Slido there as well. When we talk about drive strategy with deep customer insights, there are some key points to this principle. Defining customer insights must be seen as a core competency. Insights help you best determine what you should sell and where the innovation dollar should go. And customer insights focus your teams to move in the right direction, the direction of your customers, which is what's key and what's important. If you look at Forrester, they talk about building real customer understanding, and they're trying to coach organizations to move from surveys, move from only looking at analytics to more qualitative, to more rich data sources. And so they talk about diary studies, contextual inquiries, ethnographic field studies, right? So many of these things pioneered by Intuit and other organizations. And if you look at any organization, you're kind of trying to move up this maturity ladder, right? And so if you believe that providing better experiences for your customers equal more revenue, more loyalty, less churn, et cetera, like you want to move up this maturity ladder. Now, if you look at specifically around customer insights, really until you get to level 4, and this is where executive leadership realizes that building to meet the user's needs is important, right? Design decisions are now informed by data, qualitative and quantitative, right? This is a level 4 part of this, the maturity here. And if you look at how many organizations are actually at a level 4, it's unfortunately very low. Like a lot of organizations still have a really hard time kind of integrating customer insights into their daily process. So going out and understanding customers, going out and sitting with customers, that's key. It's key to get right next to them. This was an article that was posted the other day on O'Reilly talking about the death of Agile. And I think it's very important to remember because a lot of times we get in these product cycles, we're trying to build things and launch things very quickly. But the original manifesto from Agile, and this was a kind of a long-time technologist, long-time kind of member of the Agile teams, the one thing they didn't see, and the one thing that more than anything else captures the value in Agile is the ongoing conversation between the customer and the developer. They go on to say actual users and customers regularly and repeatedly, right? This is built into Agile, and this is what a lot of organizations forget, right? They rather do it kind of in a room, right, together as a team, and they don't want to get out of the building. Now, we do think that customer insights must be disciplined. This is another problem where you might be gathering these insights, but how do you actually utilize them? And so you must reveal the reality of your customers, and that's the going out, those contextual inquiries that Forrester was talking about, those diary studies. Customer insights must be actionable, not philosophical. The customer experience strategy must plug into business and technology, right? This is you're working between those teams, and then everything must be tied together with a delivery roadmap. Because if you're not delivering to those customer needs, right, then why are you gathering those insights? So with that, I do have some questions for Jenny here. Sorry, let me pull up here. All right, so Jenny has actually been working out at a large airline client and focused in some of their digital transformation efforts. And I know in this case they were focusing on employee systems. And so and then these are the employee systems that really run the airline. So like where are the planes, the gate changes, how fast they're turning around, kind of really interesting, kind of hard stuff. Like, I know we say customer insights, and I've used that term a couple times. In this case, it's kind of employee insights. Like how do you go about gathering employee insights? How does that work? Oh, sorry.
Okay.
No.
Hello? Okay, there we go. The exact same way you would gather the customer insights. So in customer studies, we would recruit users, but for employees, we work with the business and identify those users that we want to spend time with. In this instance, we were trying to get a holistic picture of the operation. So I spent time out in their network command center, as well as out at stations at cities across the nation, both with ground crew, maintenance. It it was a little bit of everybody.
Or when you sit with employees, are they excited that you're there? Are they not excited? Like, what do they? How do they feel about that?
At first, there's going to be a little bit of a reservation because you're observing them do their job. So their first inclination is, okay, you're here to report on me or to kind of see what I'm doing wrong. And our first step is really just putting them at ease, explaining that we're there to help them and help them have better digital solutions for their tools. One thing that's really nice about coming in as kind of a third party too is we're unbiased. So what we saw there is they had experienced past teams coming in to look at the efficiencies across their organization, but it was internal. And so there's sometimes a reservation to share the information. And when we were able to go out and really get some raw pain points and data to bring back.
So it kind of breaks down silos as well, right? Because usually an employee experience isn't siloed. It goes kind of across the whole
Absolutely.
Organization.
Yeah, and the study kind of kept growing because of that.
Yeah.
We realized there's more individuals we needed to talk to when we got out there.
So do you feel like the time kind of, walking a mile in their shoes, is that valuable for user experience and development teams? Like, how do they utilize that data, those insights?
Yeah, absolutely. On a couple of different levels. So what we're able to see out there is really a lot of the paper processes and processes that were being done on radios, communication channels, verbally and all that. And what we did was we tracked those and diagrammed them. So when we came back to the delivery teams, we were able to really walk them through what's actually happening out there, which was very different than how those teams were really breaking down the features. It was replacing two aging systems. And so if you look at one-to-one feature sets, you're gonna build the same thing again. By going out in the field, we were able to identify different processes that we needed to improve in the new system.
So we're going to do a couple polls. Toby, do you want to run a poll right now? Let's see how well this works. Yeah, we have to do a screen switch, so not fully integrated. All right, so to the audience, how often are you able to get in front of your users? And by get in front of, meaning that you're sitting next to them, you're riding along with them, you're in their homes, you're shopping with them, really close to your customers. Man, it's real time, look at that. All right. So it's funny how immediately, daily was at number one there for a second, and now it's dropped down. So I guess those that are saying quarterly or never, or even maybe monthly, like why? Like why is it harder? Does anyone want to talk about maybe a challenge they might have in getting in front of a customer? Like why is it that, or is that infrequent? I guess if someone wants to talk about that, does anyone want to volunteer? Toby does have a mic. No.
Anyone?
There we go. Yeah, Toby's going to bring your mic.
This is more for the video than anything else.
So I'm able to get to my customers weekly, but we have a lot of different customers. But one customer segment that's hard for us to get to is our pilots and our flight attendants. That's mainly because of unionization. And so we have to work with our unions, and they have reps, and sometimes it's just not as easy because there is that bureaucratic administration.
Well, that's very appropriate.
Yeah, we've experienced that a lot, or I did. There was ways that we had to kind of work around that. Some of it, right now, we actually have a validation happening that it was more of a offer up to the users within the command center, and it was voluntary. So we're recruiting individuals that way.
I was going to say the same thing. I work at Hilton, and so a lot of the hotels have unions and different standards, and giving information or customer insights or employee insights is not part of their job, and they're not measured on that, so it's just oftentimes harder to get in front of them on a daily or weekly basis. But then, too, when we implement change, we don't see the change become effective daily or weekly, so we like to let it bake for a little while and then to go see if it actually was making a difference.
I mean, I think hotels are really interesting. Like, are you able to follow kind of the day in the life of a, I mean, that's really interesting to see kind of what their challenges are and their pain points. And I know with unions, I know like even I've heard like when you change a system, there might have to be regulation changes within that union. So maybe they want the thing to be changed or maybe they don't want the thing to be changed, right? So there are some nuances there. Okay. Well, anyways, I'm glad to see most of you are getting out in front of your customers. So how about the business team? So we talk about collecting insights, in this case, employee insights. How do the business teams, does this help them prioritize features? Does this help them to know where to invest for the year? Like, how are the business teams using these insights?
Yeah, so in this instance, we originally started with one business unit. We were working with ground ops. Because of some of the insights we found, we were able to kind of elevate that to a level that it was across some of those silos, so crew, maintenance. And so what we found out is there was a lot of things being built almost exactly the same for different groups. And so there was a lot of efficiencies that can be discovered through doing this process and mapping it. And the business units are starting to realize that they can reprioritize based on some of the insights that are found.
Yeah. And then I guess since starting this process, like, are they able to kind of really kind of embed it into their culture, their DNA? Like, is this something that's continuing, or is it something that's still kind of ad hoc?
Yeah, it's definitely continuing, and we're learning more as we go. So because the systems were so massive, we did the holistic picture first, but now we're kind of diving deeper into different areas of it. Another thing that we're seeing is, in relation to the unions as well, is by determining and kind of having that future vision set earlier, they're allowed to start those conversations with the union prior to rolling out software. So there was an instance, a solution went out too soon, and they hadn't been able to kind of vet that with the unions. What we're seeing now is we're getting ahead of that and working with understanding how automation and optimization is going to change the roles of those users. So sometimes it's going to be blending responsibilities on the job than what they've always done.
How do you test automation or machine learning or AI? Like, how do you test that?
We actually had a lot of involvement with the users to kind of calibrate a solution that they were doing within the command center to help efficiencies across the network. So understanding where they need to make changes to the schedule. This was something that was done very manually prior to we started out there. That was about 6 years ago. And what we learned is really using their tribal knowledge improved the outputs of the solution. So it was something that we worked very collaboratively on.
Yeah, so you're collecting that tribal knowledge. That's all right. So Toby, do we have any questions?
Right now.
Okay. All right.
Where are you going on vacation? That's still,
I was going on vacation, actually. If you really want to know, and I had to cancel it because it was to Asia, unfortunately. So, all right. Well, I have, I guess, one more question. So, what's the easiest way to get started, kind of with in-person contextual inquiries? I guess, let's say you're an organization that maybe hasn't done that before, or have seen challenges there. Like, what is kind of a first step to get started with that?
I think stakeholder buy-in. So you really have to convince leadership that we need the insights of the users, and it's really risk aversion. So you can do studies in a very small way that really can impact and save a lot of development dollars with building the wrong thing. And I think when you start talking about what you gain from it, and it can make change.
Yeah. And then I guess I think a common thing that I hear sometimes is that qualitative research can't be quantified. I guess. Like, how many people do you need to see before it's a pattern, and like, how could you make a decision off X number of people? Like, so what would you say to someone that has reservations around the number of people or the amount of data? Yeah,
you can start to see the major pain points with a very small subset of users, in kind of a common practice is once you start seeing those repeated pain points, you've probably talked to enough people. At the airline, there was lots of groups, so we did spend time with a wider range, but you can find, especially in validation kind of studies, anywhere between 5 to 8 people, you start to see repeating patterns.
Does anyone have any questions that are not on the on the app? Or any input? Again, I'd love for anyone to share here about, especially maybe some of the people that are seeing users daily or weekly, like, how did you get that integrated into your culture? Because again, a lot of times we don't see that. So I'm excited to hear how maybe someone got that kind of integrated into their culture. There you go, James.
And as people are thinking of a question, sorry, James, we did have this when that was pre-populated as far as a poll. I still think that it would be neat to sort of see a pulse from the room of how dedicated do you actually feel that your organization is to uncovering those customer or employee insights.
Yeah, so again, when you think about that maturity scale earlier, right, like not a lot of companies were at that level. So I'm glad to see a higher maturity, which probably makes sense because you're all a part of a experience-driven group, so that would make sense that you guys would have a higher proportion of people. All right, so somewhere in the middle. So James, I know Intuit is extremely customer-centric and customer-driven. How did that happen, and what are some of the tricks there, or the tips?
Well, the thing I was thinking about was so first of all, I work for the Strategic Partnership Group, which is a little complicated because we don't necessarily work directly with the customers that we've declared as part of our strategy. And actually, it is really hard to recruit for a relationship. So how do you learn how a pro uses a third-party app to serve a customer?
This is a tax pro.
Yeah, sorry. So as you're thinking about, if we have a partner that's an accounting pro, and then we also have a partner that's a third-party app developer, like a timesheets provider or a HSA provider.
Which we have in the room.
And then you've got a customer, and what you're trying to understand is what is that experience like for that customer in how they sort of live in this triangle. Recruiting for that is complicated. And we haven't mastered how to do that yet. But what I will tell you is the two things that have super helped. One is budget for recruiting. So actually put money aside so that you can actually pay for and, to meet people so you don't have to rely on your designers or your CIO or whoever to go intercept people in a coffee shop, but to actually make that a real intentional practice to either go to them or bring them to you and pay them. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is it starts with people at this level expecting it from their employees and saying, this is how we're going to make decisions. I don't know how many of you have sat in a boardroom and debated over what a customer is going to do, but being able to say, well, we observed some customers and this is what they did, kind of shuts that argument down, which is nice. And in an age of where decisions and making decisions fast matters, having customer data that you can use to help make those decisions in hours or days instead of months of the same conversation over and over again, that's been super valuable. And so, like I said, it starts with the leaders asking for it and then paying for it so that we can get it done.
A quick follow-up. So a lot of times I feel like people who maybe haven't really grabbed, well, I'm going to ask them one more question, who really haven't bought in on kind of deep customer research, contextual inquiries, diary studies, whatnot. It's when you say pay people, I feel like sometimes people are turned off by that because they think that means that they're going to be influenced in some way. Like, what are your thoughts on paying for people's time to get input from them?
That's fair. I mean, we're talking about gift cards for $25 or something like that, but just something that just sort of opens them up to have the conversation with you. It is true that if you Craigslist these things, that you will get people that aren't necessarily great qualified people. I mean, screen them appropriately so that you get the right customer. But then and then you're just basically giving them a little bit of
paying them for their time, not for their opinion.
Yeah, just to soften the experience of spending an hour.
And I guess a lot of times you're doing observations, so it's I mean, you're just watching them work, right? I mean, that's kind of what the goal is there. So.
Yeah, not all of it, but yeah, some of it. We do things where we go and we'll sit in somebody's office for a couple hours. But then we'll also do things where we'll invite people to come in and we'll do rapid prototyping with them in our office. So there's different ways to engage with customers. Some of them we go out, some of them we bring people in.
Yeah, cool. All right, should we move to the next principle, Toby?
Yeah, just want to let you see, there's a few questions
go.
right here, and the ones that we don't have answered right now, we'll make sure that if there's any time on the back end that we follow up. But maybe you could, I actually think that the second one is one that that I often get asked. Actually, all three of them are great questions. But maybe if you have a stance on that, Jeremy, that you
Yeah.
could quickly answer before we go to the next principle, that would be great.
Yeah, well, the second one, for me, it's you're always looking for patterns in data. So if you're going out to these intercepts or you're following people into their offices, you're looking for patterns. And so when X number of people have, a problem, there's a pain point, you could roll that up into an opportunity. And ideally, that opportunity really lives kind of all the way through the product development process. So the product, whether it's a feature or maybe it could even be like a UI element, the user experience team is actually tying back why they did something in the interface based on that opportunity from those insights. Or a product team is determining to prioritize their backlog in a specific way, again, back from those insights all the way up through the opportunity. So, ideally, if anyone says like, why is that prioritized this way in a backlog, or any designer is, why is that element there? You should be able to defend that many times with data that's been collected. So it should be very actionable. I know, Jenny, do you want to add?
Yeah, I have a quick thing to add. I think it's at its base is something that if you ask somebody, they wouldn't be able to tell you. So it's something that when you go into the field, you're going to see these workarounds that they're doing that if you ask them what they need, they wouldn't be able to communicate those to you. So it's an insight basically that you discover through the data that you can bring back to the team then.
All right.
Yep. All right. So, if you want to move on to the next
Okay,
principle.
cool. Jenny, thank you very much. I appreciate
Hey,
it.
thank you.